You're listening to Generation AI
from Live Person.
It is a beautiful summer day here in Toronto, Canada, where I'm actually located, and I am feeling pumped and excited for this podcast with my co-host, Joe Bradley. Welcome, everybody, to Generation AI. I'm Ruth Sive, and today on the podcast, I'm very excited. We'll be speaking with Chris Huggins, the head of Conversational Commerce at Virgin Media. And Chris is also a proud plant and puppy parent. Chris was actually one of the very first customers that I got to meet when I joined Live Person. And so for me, this was a very validating moment because part of what actually drew me to this job at Live Person was this sense that the company is working with the biggest brands and the most innovative people in the world. And Chris really exemplifies this. So I am super excited for our listeners to enjoy this conversation about how to leverage AI for personalization, sales impact, efficiency, and ultimately the best possible customer experiences. So before we officially welcome Chris to the show, we're going to play our one-of-a-kind piece of AI-generated content that our team has created for him. So Chris, you're going to enjoy this.
In England lives tech maestro Chris, Virgin Media's AI-driven whiz, easing purchase paths with innovation, conversational AI his fascination. Birmingham schools shaped his expertise, a wealth of skills he aims to please. Web chat, e-commerce, all in his stride, with operational management as his guide. Chris Huggins, innovator supreme, AI and commerce, a winning team, NLP at his command. To help others better, he takes a stand. At Virgin Media, he leads the way, new customers acquired day by day, gigabit broadband, speed unfurled. With chatbot magic, he rocks the world.
Wow.
Amazing.
Chris, we don't always have you on the show, but when we do, we make sure there's a strong English accent in the.
That's right.
Yeah, I noticed that. I appreciate the attention to detail there. That was amazing. Yes, I must say I've listened to quite a bit of this podcast, and I'm always impressed by the introductions. That one is. I might be somewhat biased, let's be honest, but that one is the best I've heard so far. I really appreciate that. That was very fun.
Agree. Well, welcome to the show. We're going to get right into it. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Well, okay, let's dig right in. Chris, one of the things we love to talk about with folks on the show is just kind of what drew people into AI. Was there a moment for you early on in your career and your education that started to get your interest, or how did this all get kicked off for Chris Huggins?
Yeah, I think there's two key moments for myself. When I was very young, I worked as a technical account manager with a industrial supply company randomly. But one of my accounts was Red Bull Racing. And I had the very fortunate privilege of being able to visit the factory in Milton Keynes and to be able to experience all of the automation that they had already operating within the factory way back in, it would have been 2010, 11. It was really inspiring to understand that this team that was at the pinnacle of their industry was getting there through utilizing automation for the majority of the manufacturing, and then working with the design team, understanding that they were using a rudimentary version of AI at the time to support with the designs and implementation. That then inspired me to explore the field, and that's when I started to look into machine learning, and ever since then have utilized data as best I can in these what some will call innovative, others call bizarre ways to try and maximize opportunities. And yeah, it's been a fun journey from there. But I suppose the key point that's brought me here is I worked in South Africa with BPOs, and they brought me onto a project that was really struggling in regards to the performance to targets. And I quickly identified that the key challenge that they were experiencing was centered around their contact strategy. They were treating their data in a really simplistic way. They were introducing it into a dialer strategy just simply based on the network type and based on the age demographics, for example. And there were far more signals that we could be utilizing. So I came up with a algorithm and then worked with the dialer management and then the actual dialer team to then implement this particular algorithm, and with the focus to improve the contact strategy. We succeeded, massive successes. We achieved what we needed to achieve, but then it quickly became apparent that there was more that we could be doing that was away from the traditional analog element, which then introduced SMS and then slowly progressed into web messaging, and then the rest is history. Yeah, bit of an eclectic route here, but yeah.
Yeah, and you touched on a lot of different themes that surface often in this podcast: the idea of data, the idea of efficiency, the idea of channels. You mentioned channels. We'll get to that. But I want to actually talk about this idea of data and efficiency, that I think from what you've described is really what struck you in those early days, that, automation could be a driver of greater efficiency. But I know that at Virgin Media, you're doing some really exciting things around personalization. And it's, it always strikes me that, there's this perception that efficiency and personalization in many ways are in conflict, especially when it comes to chatbots or automation. How do you address that? Talk a little bit about what you're doing to drive better personalization. I imagine this is drawn from the data. You talked about, all of the different signals that you can extract, but give us a sense of how you approach that conflict and what you're doing along those lines.
Yeah, there are generally three areas that we focus on and build projects around, and that's personalization, as you mentioned, agent augmentation, and now generative AI. Personalization, it's there's a significant spectrum that we need to consider here, but from our side, for how we're best utilizing at the moment is we're using behavioral signals to dictate the user experience within our bot interactions. So, for example, if the customer is navigating through the website and is interacting with us via the installation page, we ensure that the journey then reflects not only the behavior to that page, but the behavior on the page. If the customer has navigated to selecting an installation date, we'll make sure that when they interact with the bot is then able to open the conversation with a query centered around installation. So we're trying our best to move away from this idea of consistently having to ask the customer how we can help, and trying to use inferred logic to understand. We know that 96% of all customers that navigate via the installation page are going to be asking questions about installation. So let's utilize that knowledge within the bot interactions and ensure that we're accelerating the path to resolution by identifying very early on, okay, we know that this is your intent. Let's step to the next point in the journey without having to clarify in any unnecessary way. because we have the data to help us move and progress the conversation in the way that we know is optimal for the customer. An example of this is when a customer interacts via the direct debit page, for example. Instead of asking how we can help, the introduction is more along the lines of, it looks like you've got a query about banking. Would you like to change the direct debit date, or do you have a question about your first payment? Because we know those are the top queries from customers. So in doing that, we're able to reduce what I call TWB, which is just time with bot, and everyone would chuckle and just say that's segment average handling time. I understand, but let me have my fun. So the goal is just to reduce the amount of time that the customer is spending with the bot by utilizing the behavioral signals and any elements of personalization in the journey that we can.
I love those examples. Yeah, like in a nutshell, basically you're using those behavioral signals in the AI to arm the bot with the information it needs to have a better interaction right out of the gate. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So maybe could you've talked about, how consumer facing you're leveraging AI to deliver a more personalized experience. What are you doing agent facing? Because I know that there are ways that the AI can sort of drive better efficiency on the part of the people that are interacting with your customers. What are you doing at Virgin Media?
Yeah, it's a huge factor for us to ensure that we're utilizing conversational AI to augment our human agents, and to really tackle those monotonous tasks, such as terms and conditions. So we use conversational AI to handle terms and conditions within the conversation. So the agents don't need to. We know that this is a consistent, compliant requirement. So instead of leaving that with the human agent where it's not necessary, the human agent will simply hand that process over to a terms and condition bot experience to handle that element. I think from my side, in my early days with conversational commerce, I was responsible for a very small, some would say exclusive team, but it was just 4 agents, and I found that one of those advisors were drastically outperforming the other 3, and so we simply analysed her transcripts at the time and built a predefined content library. And as the other agents came in, we simply said to them to follow this new process utilising the predefined content. And overnight, we were able to significantly close the performance gap. We effectively bridged the performance gap between them just by utilizing predefined content. Now, snap across to today, and people start to understand my obsession with executional consistency, because with conversational AI, we can now assimilate and all of our top performing teams, and at key points in the conversation, have the other advisors trigger those support bots, replicating those high performing advisors, and therefore, in theory, should yield the same or similar results. And we're doing this at as many touch points in the conversation as possible, from the discovery steps to recommendation elements, like I said, terms and conditions, but it's even in those minutiae elements such as insurance and utilizing it to help to upsell. That's a path that we've explored in great detail over the past 12 months. How can we drive incremental revenue by introducing an upsell element into the conversational AI? And that has yielded significant successes as a result. One of my favorite projects, I would say, over the past 5 years has been introducing this, because it conflicts with the sort of archaic thinking around the idea that it needs some kind of human skill set. The digital space, those soft skill elements such as pitch, pace, tone, they're not a factor. Not in the same way that they are in the analog space anyway. we have concise content, we have speed to response, we have conversational tonality, all of which can be replicated, and that's what we try to do, and we do successfully, particularly with conversational assist.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, in some ways, like I'm trying to picture the operations over there and sort of see this patchwork of like different choices at different moments in the conversation that you guys, where you guys really have like kind of like almost an atlas of what can go on for customers and a plan for each step. Can you tell us a little bit more about this? I mean, this sort of there's a holy grail idea here around using AI not just to reduce friction in a conversation, but also to potentially give customers products and services that they want and help sell them the things that they need. And it sounds like you guys are having some success with that. Tell us a little bit more about that project. How did you set it up? What did you try to do? What would just like walk us through it a little bit?
Yeah, ultimately our goal is to, and I talk about this a lot. The objective is to contain by design. So it's to deliver these conversational AI solutions that are designed to deliver a resolution to customers by design. So I always stress this by design element, because the idea of containing customers has all sorts of questionable interpretations to it. What we're trying to do when we say by design is I'm responsible for the new acquisition elements of conversational commerce within Virgin Media O2. So everything under conversational AI, web chat, web messaging, SMS, WhatsApp, all of the fun stuff, but from a new acquisition perspective. So when I talk about containment by design, what I'm talking about is either the conversation resulting in a conversion, or we've delivered the necessary information that the customer was or the prospect was seeking at that point of the interaction. So everything that we do with our conversational AI strategy is centered around, to use your terminology there, creating this patchwork of experiences where we have a discovery bot, a closer bot, a terms and conditions bot, but ultimately the end goal is to then amalgamate all of that into one optimal experience where we can take the customer end to end in a high complexity conversation to a low complexity to a high revenue generation to low generation, and all of that. The only way we're going to be able to achieve that is utilizing the operational teams to support with driving intelligence within our bots and automation. At this point, we're using our operational teams to act as a sort of supervised learning element with our bots and automation, but at the same time we're augmenting the human agents so that they are far more effective and efficient as a result. We know in e-commerce, and in particular within our vertical, there's a correlation between speed to resolution and customer satisfaction. So the more we can build these solutions to provide a efficient resolution for both the agent and the customer, the more incremental revenue we're going to generate as a result. So we continue to iterate and build and kind of identify gaps in our current knowledge and gaps in the experience that we haven't been able to fulfill with bots and automation, and go ahead and focus very targeted projects on either customer taxonomies based on utterances through a particular journey, or building specific propositions and tailor making a bot to be aligned with that. An example of this is our social tariffs that we do for low-income families. We have our essential broadband proposition, and we've built that proposition to be delivered exclusively through our conversational AI. The digital journey is designed to be funneled through a conversational AI solution, and as a result, we were able to not only drive the sort of replicating the conversion results that the human agents were delivering, but also we were able to streamline the process that was taking 3 to 4 days down to 30 to 40 minutes.
Wow.
A phenomenal success. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think there's a lot of points in there, but just a couple to draw out that I think are worth like people thinking more about. First of all, the idea that your customer experience and that your the ease of that and the ease of resolution is in fact something like brand marketing for your company or even performance marketing for your company is something I think a lot of people pay lip service to, but don't always realize how true it really is. You can make a case that a company like an Amazon basically built their brand off of easy experiences like that. So there's billions of dollars to be made there. And I think the other thing that stands out to me in what you just said that people also often pay lip service to, but don't always do with the level of depth that you guys are doing is how well you think about and envision and categorize and kind of taxonomize the problems your customers are trying to solve and the breakpoints that they have, and just really going deep on that experience, not just trying to assemble an AI that you think is going to do a great job for all your customers and hit and hope, but really kind of have an ongoing process where you're looking at, where's this working well and where's this not, which even, and maybe especially in the age of generative AI is still important.
Yeah. I love one other thing, Chris, that I have to call it out. And I've heard you talk about this before, Chris, this idea of containment by design. The containment measure as a success measure, I agree with you, is fraught with all kinds of problems. And we should do a whole episode just on that. Like, people should be talking about it more, because sometimes containment is like a horrible experience. And so I love that you're framing it differently, this idea that it's either delivering the outcome that the consumer actually was looking for or driving some sort of conversion. In both cases, those are very much tied to your business interests and your customers' interests. Containment, as a whole, though, is not necessarily tied to your consumers' interests, often tied to business interests. But, for all of the reasons that, we'll talk about in the next episode where you come onto the podcast, I just love that you're challenging the conventional wisdom around containment generally. So I wanted to make sure that we called that out.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's a topic that we could talk about for days. But I think we've all been in scenarios and meetings or at conferences where we're hearing these containment numbers, and you can't help but question whether this is aligned with an optimal experience or not. So yeah, instead of having people question that about our containment numbers, I made sure that it's very apparent we're taking those elements into consideration, and it is all about customer centricity. So,
yeah, I think it's another one of these examples where it's like if your intent is shifted just a little bit the wrong way or the right way, the experience and the situation you create as a business can change dramatically, right? Just echoing that little shift in intent through many people and many operations. You have a kind of, I think, a pretty interesting view of the customer experience, right? You seem like, from what I understand, you're pretty channel agnostic. You really want to make sure to kind of bring the experience to the customer a little bit more than maybe other folks in your line of work. Can you talk about that for a minute or two?
Yeah. It's a great point, and something that's really close to a lot of the passion projects that I work on. I'm very conscious of the Peter Principle, and therefore I don't want to rise to a level of respective incompetence, if you like. I also struggle to understand how I would design an effective strategic plan without having a very clear understanding of the platform capabilities, the consumer behaviors, even the operational pain points. So I try and stay close to the frontliners as much as possible, to the point where I still build bots. I built one a couple of weeks ago that I'm very proud of. I still construct knowledge bases. I still configure intent domains utilizing NRUs, and the goal here is to better understand what works well for our customers and what works well for our operation. And very quickly, I'm starting to understand that businesses have an objective which isn't necessarily aligned to customer preferences. We talk a lot about channel of choice, but we don't actually mean channel of choice. What we mean is the website, the app, or voice. And that's not channel of choice, because you still have SMS, you still have WhatsApp, you still have Apple Business Messenger, you still got Google Business Messenger, you've still got someone walking into store. And I think that we should be focusing much more of our attention on delivering a consistent experience across all of those platforms, instead of trying to funnel customers into a route that is either more, let's be honest, more cost effective, or what we believe to be the traditional entry points. When I was talking about the various entry points, I missed out the key one, which is going to be a growth factor over the next couple of years, even more so, which is the social platforms, right? And so I'm trying my best at the moment. Everything we do, I'm trying to consider it as platform agnostic, as entry point agnostic, and deliver solutions that are truly multimodal. And because customers' situations change as well. A customer that starts a conversation online might need to step into the analog space. A customer that starts a conversation in the analog space might need to then step into messaging. And I think that we should be building solutions that are capable of doing that. And we have the ability to do that today. There's just a lot of traditional thinking when it comes to strategy building. I'm trying to help people think of alternative ways, and building this sort of platform agnostic multimodal solution is for sure the end goal from our perspective anyway.
Well, you've been at this for a while, Chris, but to your point, there's still a lot of very traditional thinking in this space. So, a lot of companies are just getting started. What would your best advice be for somebody, in your shoes, but much earlier in the journey? What have you learned along the way that you wish you had known when you were just getting started?
I would say align objectives. It seems like a really simplistic approach to all of this, but if everyone's objectives are aligned to this optimal customer experience, regardless of the channel, and therefore driving towards this idea of consistency, then you don't hit the friction points that I, and I'm sure others, have experienced in trying to grow this area, and what often feels like to do the right thing, because my objectives aren't necessarily aligned with other areas. So yeah, I think it starts from the top. We can talk about diversity in thinking and iterative model building. We can happily have those conversations, but it doesn't mean anything unless those objectives are aligned and everyone's moving in a consistent direction. And again, I stress the point, I do get the sense that more and more we are moving to this attempted aligned state, because you hear a lot of businesses having digital first strategies, for example. But again, it's fraught with questionable intent, and what digital means to me isn't necessarily what digital means to you, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's definitely about ensuring that there's clear, concise alignment with objectives. And then the final thing is celebrate the successes. Everyone that's worked with me knows that we move at such a significant pace. We at times don't take the time to appreciate the very fun, effective work that we've done, because it's such a fast-moving environment at the moment. So yeah, I would definitely recommend just celebrate the successes. And then I can't help but mention this one because I am experiencing this more and more so recently. Interesting introduction into it, but fail fast. It's a very topical statement, but it's true. Don't be resistant to fail. With every failure, there's an opportunity to succeed, and we are iterating significantly on a daily basis at the moment, accepting those failures and trying to drive forward towards a point of success. So yeah, those are the key ones, I would say.
Reminds me of one of my favorite American basketball quotes about Michael Jordan. How many shots did he miss on his way to the championships? That's right. I think wise words all around, and particularly the notion of alignment. It seems to kind of run through the whole conversation, not just that we've had today, not just with the business, but also with the kind of customers' needs, right? And is if everything's lined up, then you're in a position to succeed, and if it's not, you're kind of not. So one other question, Chris, we're running out of time, but I want to make sure to ask our one other staple here of you, because we want to get to know you and want people to get to know you a little bit here. So here it is. First, what's something that you wish you could automate? It's not about business, it's about Chris. And then second, what's something that you would never automate?
Oof. So I already know the last one. I saw a very interesting video the other day of a automated dog walker. I really enjoy my walks with my dog Dante. Nice little shout out to Dante there. Hopefully he doesn't come running. So I wouldn't automate walking him. It's a very, very cathartic process. And what would I automate? I would automate my current chatbot developer, Chris McQuaid, because I'm struggling to find anyone that is anywhere near as brilliant, effective, and tolerant of what at times is my madness. So yes, I would automate him.
All right, Chris McQuaid, the bots are coming for you. I'm sure he takes it as the compliment that it was. Yeah. Well, fantastic. Listen, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. A really insightful conversation around how you guys are getting AI off the ground, and in many ways, what it takes from a human component and the human side of that equation in business to really make that work, and the hard work that you got to do and the sleeves you got to roll up to kind of understand what problems you're trying to solve and what problems you're not. For my part, it was terrific to hear you. And for those of you listeners, I'm sure you enjoyed it well. Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you all so much for listening to Generation AI today.
Amazing.
Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you so much for your time.
Great having you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Generation AI,
Automating Better Business,
a show from LivePerson.
Never miss an episode by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. Please give us a rating, leave a comment, and share the episodes you love. Until next time.